Hey, I think we're live. What's up, wrestling fans? I'm Doug.
And I'm Kevin.
And this is the Two Bros Wrestling Show. We are back at it. What's happening, everybody?
Yeah, I had a little bit of a break last week, Doug. I missed you. I missed everybody out there too.
Right. It's good to be back.
Hope everyone had a good holiday, but there were some things that occurred while we were off. So we got a packed show tonight. We're previewing the next pay-per-view. You wanna get to it?
Let's just jump right in. What you got in the news tonight, brother?
I got a bell.
Opening bell. Hold on, wait. I'm being a slacker. It's like I haven't done this in a week. There we go. Opening bell.
It is time for the opening bell. We got some headlines over the last couple of weeks. First thing, and I think that probably the most notable thing in wrestling in the last 2 weeks is the New Japan Cup Finals this past weekend. And obviously, New Japan Cup would be a headline any given year. This year, it is especially so because it marks the first time in several months that any major wrestling promotion in the world has had fans in attendance. So because of the lowering of the virus cases in Japan, the government is easing up restrictions, and New Japan had been building up towards the as they've gone through the New Japan Cup for the most part without fans. They were gearing up for this weekend and the finals at Osaka Hall. And spoiler for anyone who hasn't seen it or is going to see it, the finals was Kazuchika Okada, who won the cup last year, versus Evil. And Evil, as it often does, Evil prevailed and included a heel turn there at the end, Doug. Evil went full Bullet Club after taking the cup from Okada. And then the next night, in what was a great weekend for Evil, Dominion, again in front of fans, Evil took the championship. So he is now holding both the Intercontinental title as well as the IWGP title. He took those from Naito in night 2. Again, both of these in front of a paying audience, and that's really the news here. And I don't know, Doug, if you saw any clips or not. I watched some. It definitely looks more normal than what we've become used to here with American wrestling, where we're either without audiences or in front of fake audiences. But it still didn't look normal because, everyone's in a mask, and it was obvious that, every couple of seats you had, one that was obviously roped off that, couldn't be used. So I imagine if you came in a group of 2 or 3, you would be allowed to sit together, and everyone else, would have to be separated from you by a little bit of space. So it looked strange. Did you happen to see any of that?
I have not seen it yet, so I'm going to have to hop on the interwebs and look into that. So, Evil and Kazuchika Okada were stablemates, right? Weren't they both members of Chaos?
Well, at one time they were. Evil was with Los Ngoblin. I can never say it.
I can't say that either. I can't say that one. I can't say. Yeah.
But there's been, a lot of stagnation. Obviously, they haven't been running shows for several months. They did no television or live events at all. So obviously, this was a big heel turn to kind of shake things up, shake the factions up, shake the roster up. And then they went all the way with it by not only doing the turn, but giving him the cup. And then, when he turned on Naito, they gave him the.
And you are frozen.
Japan.
Okay, there we. Hey, man, you're frozen. You went frozen on us there for a couple of seconds. The audio kept trucking until there at the end, but you're good now. You're moving again.
I'm back. Well, let's go some other headlines beyond just it's sort of coronavirus related though, Doug. WWE has obviously had a problem with, and they've kept it, kind of under wraps as to exactly how many. But what we do know that there are at least 30 individuals who have worked at the WWE Performance Center who have tested positive for COVID-19. And that number includes wrestlers, backstage workers, and production crew members. So, again, you could go on the internet and you can easily do a search as to, who's not been showing up to the performance center, for the privacy of those involved. We're not going to sit here and name and speculate on the health. But obviously, a lot of these people may not be infected. They may just not be showing up because of injury, because of fear. but there's definitely a problem in WWE right now related to their protocols that they have there at the Performance Center, and it's, again, they're keeping the numbers close to the vest, but reports are up to 30 people have thus far tested positive, and who knows how many more may end up popping a test once symptoms start, who maybe haven't been tested or shown up just yet. So another headline kind of related to this, and this is one we all could see coming, but as they did with WrestleMania, they waited to the absolute last minute to make this decision, but barely a month away from SummerSlam, the second biggest event on the WWE calendar. They have officially moved it from Boston, where it was originally scheduled to take place, to the Performance Center. No big surprise.
So what wasn't the city of Boston actually saying no major events with crowds until like some date after SummerSlam was scheduled anyway? So I'm not really sure why WWE waited so long to actually move it, unless they were going to become essential in Boston as well.
Well, we all remember WrestleMania, and the local officials in Orlando saying there's absolutely no way we're going to let an event happen in that stadium. And meanwhile, Vince McMahon had yet to make an official announcement of any sort as to what the plan was going to be. So the fact that they were obstinate and holding out in some wild hope that something was going to change and allow them to get to host SummerSlam, obviously that wasn't going to happen. But as we talked about here at the top of the show with New Japan, I mean, 3-4 months down the road, obviously America is going to have to do a whole lot more in the way of what Japan has done and to find themselves in a similar position. But it is obviously not out of the realm of possibility, at least in the rest of the world, that with proper precautions, that there will be attempts to bring audiences back into the fold. WWE is nowhere near that yet, because we here in the United States are nowhere near that yet. But
we don't like wearing masks.
Exactly. And and Doug, I mean, we've watched Japanese wrestling for years. What's interesting about you saying that is, if you think about the clips you've seen of Japanese wrestling throughout the decades, there are always a lot of masks in the crowd, not coronavirus related. Like
this is when I started watching New Japan, one of the biggest things I was just amazed about was the cosplay that goes on at the events themselves. I mean, it's like Comic-Con for wrestling, because especially like major events like say Wrestle Kingdom and other like the big major events that they have, people show up who straight up cosplaying their favorite wrestlers, and I think that's just great. I want to see more of that in America.
And obviously, just as a society, Japanese people are accustomed to wearing masks out in public in order to protect others from whatever illness it is they may have, or to protect themselves from illnesses that are out there. So this change for them culturally probably is not nearly as big a shift as it is going to be for us here as Americans. But hopefully we can turn that corner just so that we can get wrestling back the way that Japan has.
We're never gonna have wrestling the way Japan has.
There's a lot of
our closest thing is AEW to that. But
Doug, we've got to talk about the fact that since we last sat here and provided news to people, the reports are, and it's not been confirmed by either side, but the reports are that WWE in the past week and a half ago purchased Evolve. Evolve, for those of you who don't know, is one of the largest indie wrestling promotions. So many of the stars we see today in NXT and AEW and elsewhere worked their way originally through the Evolve system. WWE has had sort of a working relationship with Evolve, where they were providing talent for some of their bigger shows. There was actually even a pay-per-view for those who might have remembered or watched last year when Evolve did one of their events on the WWE network. But there were always reports here in the last month or so, particularly as coronavirus raged, that Evolve was in some trouble. And apparently the savior of that might be the WWE stepped in. Now, what did they do? Did they purchase just for the sake of having the tape library? As I said, so many of their talent went through that system, so now they would own that history for a lot of their stars. Or do they have plans to do something with Evolve as part of an expanded WWE network, which was something else that was discussed at one point in time? There really isn't anything that I'm hearing one way or the other on that, Doug. I don't know if you've
I really haven't
anything different.
I really haven't heard anything about it either, but it does also make sense that if WWE was planning on actually purchasing Evolve back in April when we had our Black Wednesday, that it makes sense that they needed to move some money around on the books to make that purchase a little bit more palatable to all of the shareholders too, especially since they were losing money going into a global pandemic. So I mean, deals like that don't just happen overnight. So I'm sure that's been in the works for a while. And once the global pandemic hit, it makes sense to start moving around the numbers to make it again a little bit more palatable and a little bit more easy to swallow.
And if you're an old school fan out there, obviously you remember the Monday Night Wars coming to an end when WWE purchased WCW. Obviously, that's a much larger transaction, but at the time, I recall, and you all will as well, that there were hope that they would revive Nitro or they run two brands. And in the long run, what it really was is that Vince wanted contracts. Vince wanted the tape library, and it would not surprise me if really this acquisition of a company that was in some trouble anyway is probably more likely that they're acquiring a tape library than it is that they might be at this point in time running any sort of separate promotion, at least in the near future.
Evolve is a North American company, right?
Correct.
So there's really no sense for them to run a different promotion since they have NXT already in North America. Yeah, so
they could pull up Austin Theory and these guys just recently come from Evolve as one example. There's still talent there. Obviously, the pay-per-view that they did on the network last year showed that there's talent there to be had. They might be looking to pick off a few contracts as well.
Right.
The last thing I mentioned, Doug, in the news is that we spoke last time on the show about the amazing docu-series on the WWE Network that focused on The Undertaker, The Last Ride.
Right.
It's probably worth noting that they apparently it was so successful that there is going to be an additional episode, and it'll be The Undertaker, The Last Ride. It will air next week. What I'm hearing is that it is kind of a clip show. It's just made up of really cool stories from The Undertaker, things that just didn't have a natural fit in the flow and the narrative they were doing with the series itself. But it's sort of kind of an outtakes, a best of the rest, if you will. And so that happens next Sunday. And if it's even half as good as the material that made the actual documentary, it'll be worth checking out, folks.
So man, for a guy who never broke character for 30 years, there has to be more than a handful of amazing stories. I mean, the dude could have his own show where he just sits and tells stories about the business for, a half hour or an hour every week. And people are going to watch this because, again, The Last Ride has been really great to where we get to see the Undertaker out of character finally after all this time. We'll call it the Undercharacter from now on.
That's right. The Undercharacter series continues next week. Find out more.
I'm going to have another drink.
And Doug, with that, unless you have anything else.
Are we going? Let's roll on to the main event.
Hey, Maciel. Thank you for tuning in.
Yes, thank you. All right, main event. So let's get to it, brother. WWE Extreme Rules Horror Show. Man, this looks to me like a hot mess of cinematic nonsense. And I've got to say, I really liked the cinematic nonsense when it first took off. I really loved the Boneyard match. I love the Funhouse match, the Bray Wyatt, John Cena stuff at WrestleMania. I'm tired of it now, man. I am sick of it. I really don't care who loses an eye next Sunday at this point. But
what I have read now, of course, things can change, is that they are only planning on 2 of these to be cinematic matches. And then we're going to go match by match, folks, and let us know what you think about each of these and who you think might win. But yeah, there's only supposedly 2 of these that are actually going to be cinematic, and we'll talk about those as we work our way through them.
I don't know, man. When you bill it as the horror show,
it sounds like the whole thing. Yeah,
you're going to lean hard into this. I mean, and more power to them if that's the way they're going to go. But I'm already checking out of this, and maybe it'll be awesome. I don't know, but I'm still going to watch it. Yes, because I'm that guy. But I'm going to complain about it because I'm the grumpy old man, I guess. But all right. You want to go through these? I got a list of
man
pulled up here. So first up, I pulled up the CBSSports.com preview these matches. And the first one they list, I guess these are in no particular order because we have the Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt swamp fight is a non-title match. So I think this is another clever way where we're going to see Braun Strowman go over again to build his face character, because this is Braun Strowman versus Bray Wyatt. I see no mention of the Fiend here again, so I'm calling this for Strowman again, just to get over and to push that face character with a defeat of Bray Wyatt and have him finally break away from the Wyatt family. What are your thoughts?
Well, the idea of it being a swamp fight, this is one of the two that are currently planned, at least, to be filmed cinematically and somewhere other than the Performance Center. Obviously, being a swamp fight, it would make sense that they would take a different location and put this somewhere. I expect cinematic nonsense. I expect that since it is a non-title match, that ultimately the finale, the finish, whatever it may be, is going to be inconsequential. And in that way, it doesn't really matter which way this goes. I don't think we're done seeing Bray Wyatt and Braun Strowman until we see the Fiend versus Braun Strowman. So I think that's something that you rightfully pointed out. I'm with you. I think that the train keeps rolling, no pun intended, and Braun takes this one.
Yeah, maybe when we finally get to SummerSlam, then we get to see the Fiend in the rubber match. But Braun's going to take this one. So, if you want to jump on to the next one, CBS has it listed as WWE Championship McIntyre versus Ziggler. And
let's get back to that. That's going to be the main event. Let's get back to that one.
All right, we'll take that one last. There is a Raw Women's Championship. You want to go ahead and tackle that one?
Yeah, that one is as far as we know, even though it's on Extreme Rules, which means it'll probably get some sort of stipulation. Currently, there is no stipulation. Mm-hmm. It is, just singles match. And honestly, one of the ones on the card I'm most looking forward to, not just because it doesn't have the gimmick, but because of the work involved by the ladies who are participating. You got Asuka versus Sasha Banks, and the backstory of this one is you got Sasha and Bayley doing their best work in a long while right now, having fun on this roster together, and Bayley is holding 2 belts and Sasha wants to have 2 belts. So in addition to their tag team championships, Sasha wants to get herself a world championship just like Bayley has. I think that there's a very good chance that's going to happen. I think that before you get that big breakup down the road between Sasha and Bayley, that this would be an opportunity to get all the women's titles on these 2 women and then have that be some sort of instigation for the eventual breakup, be it jealousy or 2 belts wanting to become 3 belts. So I actually think that Asuka is going to lose this one and Sasha's going to go over.
I would love to see that. Not that I do not like Asuka. I really am a huge fan of Asuka, but I'm also a huge Sasha Banks fan, and I love where that could go with both Bayley and Sasha holding the respective Raw and SmackDown female straps along with the female tag team championship. I think that's great. It has a lot of potential for that eventual breakup we're going to see. I think it's great, and I'm calling it with you on this one that Banks comes away with the belt after, shenanigans, of course. We're going to see Bayley shenanigans and Kairi Sane, if she still is or isn't employed. That seems to wax and wane these days, where she's written off TV, but then she shows back up. She's going to Japan. She's staying. I'm not sure where we're going to see Kairi Sane, but hopefully we'll see her next week in some shenanigans.
Well, while we're at it, we might as well take the match that's kind of tied into that one and do the other women's match, which is a championship for the SmackDown title, where Bayley is defending against Nikki Cross. I like Nikki. I like Nikki and Alexa as a team. Because of the bigger picture storyline here that we just got through discussing. That's why I think that these matches are so tied together, it makes sense to talk about them together. There's no reason for Bayley to lose at this time. I know she's had the belt for a very long time, but honestly, I think she's doing the better work since WrestleMania and the whole time she's been the champion. So I say that in a competitive match that also should be pretty good on paper with the two women involved in this, I think that Bayley retains so that we can maybe have that disintegration at SummerSlam between the women's tag team champions. What do you think, Doug?
So one of my favorite Nikki Cross matches was when she was in NXT. Asuka was still champion, and I believe it was a triple threat match, but I cannot for the life of me remember the third person that was in this match with Nikki Cross, Asuka, and it's escaping me. But Nikki took a lot of abuse in that match, and I really took notice of Nikki after that match. Asuka, of course, came out on top because she left NXT undefeated as the women's champion, but I don't see Nikki I'm not going to see it. I don't see her as championship material. It's not her time. And for the story that needs to unfold with Bayley and Sasha Banks, we need them with belts. So I'm going with you on this one too. We're probably going to fall. We do this quite a bit.
We do. We're probably going to be very wrong, but we'll be wrong together.
That's okay. Our fantasy booking is always awesome. So.
Where you want to go to next?
Oh my goodness, I will lose track here. So, do you have a list? Because all right. Let's just go with let's stick with your list, and we'll go that way.
Well, let me talk about one then that isn't officially mentioned because it's pretty much SmackDown set it up that it's going to happen. So, I imagine that either as your pre-show match or as your opening contest, you're probably going to see the tag team titles held by the New Day over on SmackDown defended against Shinsuke and Cesaro. And I want to mention this one, even though it's not official yet, because honestly, New Day have been around that title so often. I don't think it hurts them or helps them either way if they hold those belts. I think, though, that after a period where they've both been a little lost on the roster, I've been entertained by the tag team of Shinsuke and Cesaro. I actually think that we could see a title change here, and I really like that duo as a team because they were doing nothing with them on their own, and together they've gotten a bit of a push, and I hope they go all the way and give them the belts because New Day don't need those belts.
I agree. New Day does not need those belts, and I've been a huge fan of Shinsuke since you turned me on to that AJ Nakamura match back in New Japan right before they left. And he was great in NXT. He never quite got that, big push. And I don't think the American audiences have ever seen the greatness that is Shinsuke Nakamura. And Cesaro, my goodness, here's a man who deserves every push that he's never gotten. I mean, he deserves all that and more.
Well put, because the man not only has the wrestling skills, he has the physique and look that Vince normally likes. So the reasons that he wasn't a world champion years ago confound me, quite honestly. But they are seeming to get behind this tag team right now. And again, like you, both of these guys, whether or not their best work may be behind them, that's debatable, obviously, but age is not a friend of any athlete. It's fun to see these guys seeming to have a good time again and finding themselves in a title match. So hopefully this match gets booked. It was pretty much set up on the last edition of SmackDown, and hopefully we get new tag team champions.
That would be very cool. That would be very cool. Anything that gets more Cesaro and more Shinsuke on my TV, I am all for that. And like you say, New Day, it doesn't hurt or hinder at this point. I mean, New Day is a beast of their own with or without straps. So
absolutely, they're over regardless.
Yeah.
Go talking straps. Let's talk another title match, Doug. We have Apollo Crews, who has been just a really pleasant surprise over the last couple months, defending the United States Championship against MVP. I'll go ahead and let you get your take on this, and I'll tell you what I think. I think we're definitely going to agree on this one because there's just no way, right?
So MVP is great enhancement talent in his later years since he's came back to the WWE, and I see that happening here. He puts Crews over and makes him look really, really good. Not that that's hard. I could make Apollo Crews look good in a ring. I mean, the dude is great anyway. So I think this is a passable match that'll maybe run 5 minutes if it runs that long. Maybe some shenanigans, but it's going to be in. It's out, and it's done. Crews looks great. MVP puts him over, makes him look even better than he already looks, and it's over and done.
Honestly, I know I just talked about the match that has yet to be officially booked, and the tag team contest potentially being the match that they put on the pre-show. Wouldn't surprise me though if they decided that that is more on the main card material. That this match for the U.S. belt might be the match that they throw on the opening card, because like if it goes 5 minutes, that might be a little long, because
Right.
there's no reason that Apollo Crews should have much trouble with MVP. And it's nothing against MVP, as you said, at this point in his career. He's been a fantastic addition, I think. Bobby Lashley, if nothing else, the weakness in his game is, been an ability to carry a lot of emotion in a promo, and MVP has that in spades, and charisma in spades. So as a mouthpiece, I love him. Obviously, we know here that the real feud is not MVP versus Apollo Crews. The real feud here is Apollo Crews versus Bobby Lashley, and I think that is where we're going to be ending up somewhere around SummerSlam.
Exactly. It's a build towards SummerSlam with this.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on board with that.
So we got 3 matches left, and the 2 stipulations, the world title. I know you were going to mention it earlier. I know that probably will be the main event, but
yes,
because these other matches got a whole lot in the way of controversy surrounding them, if you want to go ahead and let's get the main event out of the way, because we can really group those last 2 together with the stipulations that they both have. So if you're all right with talking McIntyre Ziggler now.
I'm always down with talking McIntyre. I mean, my God, this man is finally he is showing why he was the chosen one back in the day. So this stipulation, we don't actually have a stipulation for the match yet, do we? It's
No.
a to be determined stipulation, right?
And what Dolph is doing is teasing the fact that it would be bad strategy to name that a stipulation too soon. And it wouldn't surprise me if he takes it all the way to the pay-per-view as to what that stipulation is going to be.
It's going to be like a comedy challenge, isn't it? It's going to be something ridiculous like that. Since Ziggler's a stand-up comedian on his downtime, we're going to get something like that. Cinematic comedy challenge.
That would be
it right now.
That would be greatly that would be very disappointing if that's the way that this match is headed. But and this is no offense to Ziggler, who, again, you talk about Cesaro. I mean, regardless of what you think of Ziggler right now at this point in time, there was a point in time where he looked like the next Shawn Michaels. He looked like the next big thing. They never fully got behind him in a push. His push was always, start, stop. But it'll be a great match because Ziggler's a great talent. But because he's never main event, level, there's no way that he goes over here. He helps put on a good contest, and that's about all. Drew got to continue this march to SummerSlam and a more significant opponent. And again, that is not a slam on Ziggler. It's just a matter of where he is at this point in his career on the card, is that there would be no way in the world that they would switch that belt, in my opinion.
Hold on. No, you didn't, brother. We're going to talk about it next. Hang in there.
We're out of order. We're out of practice.
We are so out of order tonight.
Yeah, we're saving that to last for a particular reason.
Which I think me and Kevin will be both do our grumpy old men rants about that, But man, Ziggler, I know I'm probably overselling wrestlers tonight, but Ziggler is another one of those talents, just like Cesaro. And I think there comes a point when you're in the WWE, if you can sell, your job is to then start to make people look good. And, like I was joking about, nobody needs to make Apollo Crews look good. I could get in there and do that because he's just that good. Ziggler could make me look good in a ring, though. He's going to sell, my sloppy lariats and my clothesline, and going to make it look great. It's going to put so much power behind me stumbling around in the ring.
And folks, if you've not seen Doug's lariats, they are truly awful.
Especially my buckshot across the top rope. It's a horrid thing. It's a horrid thing.
Ziggler is going to fly around this ring. That brogue kick that comes at the end, I'm already picturing just, how detached his head's going to look by the time he flips over 2 or 3 times. It's going to be a great match, but there's really no suspense in it. Because Ziggler's just, at least the way he's booked, not talent-wise, but the way he's booked, he's not at the level of Drew. In fact, Doug, I know we're obviously on the same page as where it's heading, but thinking of the fact that Ziggler isn't at that level, do you even think that this will close? I mean, I have it listed as last because it is for the big championship, but do you think that there's a chance that one of these other more grudge style matches that have got a lot more airtime might be something they close with?
David Poole's chiming in about Mysterio and Rollins already, and maybe people are more invested in that because maybe
Yeah.
they're looking at that we're one Claymore away from Drew's next opponent, so maybe people are more invested in what we're going to see is what has got to be a ridiculously cinematic event with a little. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself, so I won't rant yet, but
I think Mysterio and Rollins is going to be the main event. So let's go to the other match that we have left.
What do we have left?
And what we have left is Sheamus versus Jeff Hardy in a bar fight.
Man, this is ridiculous. This is so ridiculous. As I said here, drinking my fine Kentucky bourbon, this is ridiculous for so many reasons. For a man who has had so many obvious issues with his own demons and has fought them throughout his career, to make this a storyline, I mean.
There's certain storylines that always make me uncomfortable.
Yes.
And I know that there's always the idea in a lot of writing rooms that if we can take the real world and the real life of these guys and just up the volume a little bit, that it makes for great television. But there are just certain places you don't go. And history has proven time and time again that there are certain places you don't go for the health and sake of these men and women. Usually, if you take a real world relationship and you exploit it on TV, you're dooming that relationship to fail. History has shown. And when we've had people with addiction issues or alcohol issues in the past, be it the Road Warriors with Hawk and Animal, that storyline, or I mean, it never works out well for the person with the issues. I watched that promo on Friday night, and the things that Jeff said, we're supposed to get kind of reactions from the home audience of the inspiration of this man can do it. We're behind him. Everyone deserves a second chance. All these things that we all believe to be true. And as I listened to it, I thought, and I even told my wife at the time as I was watching, I'm like, if this was the man actually talking in a real life interview, I would be impressed and hopeful that this sounds great. But knowing it's scripted, I'm just seeing it played back at some point in the future should he fall. And that's too much pressure to put on someone who has an illness, and it's not fair to the performer, even if he agreed to it. And I know he supposedly did. There's just no way in the world that you should have a match based around alcohol. So, one, we hate the concept. I think we're both in agreement on that. But because it has to be a bar fight, the execution of it's not going to make for the kind of match these two could have. They actually had a pretty good contest on free TV I don't remember if that was this month or last month, but they showed that they could work well in a ring. They don't need all this other stuff to have a good fight. I think this will actually get in the way of the match they could have. And I figure that Jeff does get his comeuppance and comes out on top, and Vince can pat himself on the back and say, see, you can conquer your demons. I was telling a longer story. It's just a story that doesn't need to be told. But I think Hardy does go over.
I agree. I certainly hope Hardy goes over, but you're absolutely right with that, man. I mean, if Jeff does slip and fall at some point in the future, and we are all human and dealing with our own issues on a daily basis, and just because he is currently defeated those demons and has them locked away does not mean they don't escape at some point in the future and cause him more troubles. And when they do, you're absolutely right, you can throw this back, and it may be yet another angle at that point. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'll look at the angles that they did with his brother Matt and Edge back in the day with the whole Matt Edge thing, and they Edge is just today I was reading a thing where Edge was talking about, realizing that, okay, we can get through this as professionals. We're not going to be friends again, but let's use this and let's use it to make some money and further our careers. Jeff Hardy's not someone who needs to further his career at this point. I mean, no. Jeff Hardy is a legend in the business. It's not like, he's in his early 20s trying to make a name for himself. Sheamus is a great worker too, but I'm just not pleased with the way this is going. But I mean, it's what we got, and I think Jeff does go over. I certainly hope so, but we'll see, man.
You better hope so, because if he doesn't, that means this is stretching on to SummerSlam, because eventually he will get his comeuppance and come out on top. If they stretch this out for another month, then it's another month of arrest and drunk driving charges and barroom skits and just other nonsense. So let's hope that it's over with, even though it will be offensive regardless.
Yeah.
And then let's bring up this comment from David. It's a great segue.
I was waiting on it because I thought it would make a great segue, and I agree. The more I think about it, it really is absolutely ridiculous. I was listening to the Cornette's podcast about this, and Cornette wasn't really on board with this. The guy that does the podcast with him was trying to explain what was going on, and he was like, "Okay, wait a minute. You mean for somebody to win, somebody has to physically pull out the other person's eye?" It is legitimately an eye for eye match.
So I do think that David, the reason we're talking about this one last is he's right. This is going to be your main event. I believe that there's a very good chance this closes the show, because two reasons. One, they've invested a ton of time in it. Two, it is going to be one of the two cinematic matches that we know that we're definitely getting. The swamp match is one. I've read that the other match that is going to be the cinematic style is this match. I have even read that as part of the cinematic style of this match, they're going to be using CGI so that someone is shown getting their eye physically pulled out of their head so that they can I'm not kidding you. I have read several sources that say, obviously in this era when we're not in front of fans, a lot of this stuff can be pre-taped. So folks with inside information may already know.
Exactly. Where do we go from here? A decapitation match? Is that next?
To be fair, we all have two eyes, so you can at least get a rematch out of this. So if you've been a fan of any length of time, we've all seen the kind of matches where, the threats are made of, well, you did this to me, and I'm now going to do this to you and dismember you, send you to the hospital, take your eye. All that I'm actually fine with. When I first saw this match set up, I was fine with it. We've had beatdowns, through the years, whether they be backstage or in parking lots where guys have, gone around with eye patches or slings. You sell an injury.
AEW did do an eye for an eye match already, by the way. Just saying. Just throwing it out there.
The idea that, hey, I'm going to get you in there and I'm going to take your eye the way that you did me, I'm fine for that as a threat. As a stipulation is where it crosses the line between being, okay, these guys are really blood feud at each other's throats, to what? That's the only way you can win is pulling out someone's eye. You cross that line from the absurd, which wrestling most certainly can be, to the ridiculous when it stops being as fun. When they first set this up, I thought that that's where we were going with it, Doug. I thought it was, okay, he blinded him, and now he's going to threaten, I'm going to get in a match and blind you too. I didn't know that was going to be the way you win.
But Scott's got a point here. I mean, they might as well do finger matches. I mean, it's all coming. I mean, we're going to see.
If you sit there and you put your opponent's hands on the ring steps and you stomp on him, you break his fingers, he's out for a month, he's doing promos with his broken fingers, I'm coming back, I'm going to break your hand.
Yes.
I'm fine for that too. When the stipulation is I'm going to sever your finger off and that's how I win the match, then it's crossed the line to me.
The only way to win this match, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments right now, Kevin, call me out, but the only way to win this eye for an eye match is to physically remove your opponent's eye.
So if you're a fan of pro wrestling, you obviously would be, or you wouldn't be watching two old guys sitting here talking about it, right? But I mean, if you've thought the one thing that was missing was someone being blinded in a match, then this is the pay-per-view for you, because they are promising that someone is going to physically lose their eye during the middle of a professional wrestling contest, which is beyond ridiculous. And
Did you see that comment? Sorry.
Pull that up.
I just totally popped for it.
Pull that up.
So, okay, merchandising. Hello. You're totally right.
Folks, this is what we're talking about, though. The fact that we can laugh about it and make these kind of jokes it's a joke. It's ridiculous. And I know that there is a place for comedy in wrestling, but they're not playing it off as comedy. They're playing it
No.
off as serious. They're also playing it off as the main event. This isn't something that's the popcorn filler between two serious contests on this card. This is probably going to be at the top of the card, if not the final match, and it's ridiculous. I know I'm not predicting a winner here. I haven't predicted a winner yet because the stipulation is so over the top, but I figure that again, Ray's got to at some point get his comeuppance, and he only has one eye, so he can't afford to lose them both. So I figure he takes Rollins' eye.
Okay, we're going to disagree on this one. So here's the way I'm fantasy booking, and here's what I'm seeing happens. Ray, a little insider information, but Ray's contract is over. Ray's working without a contract right now, so it's a gentleman's agreement. Ray's not going to really go anywhere because I guess Dominic is actually in training in NXT, and what we're eventually going to see is Dominic, come back, to avenge his father after Rollins does take an eye, and until he totally makes it merch like David Poole's talking about here.
And that's going to leave Ray blind. He's already down to one eye.
Yeah, Rollins will take the damaged eye. It's going to happen. I'm telling you.
So we got one disagreement on this card, folks, and that is probably our main event. But one thing that we do agree about it, though, is it's going to be ridiculous.
Or maybe this is the way Ray exits the WWE. Rollins takes the good eye. Ray can't wrestle anymore. He's over and done. We have a built-in feud down the road when Dominic comes back to avenge his father, and then Ray goes over to AEW and does awesome things with the Lucha Brothers.
As an aside, though, Dominic's going to have a long way to go. I know he's still extremely young. I know he's grown up in this business. He doesn't quite yet have the look of a competitor. He doesn't have the charisma of his father at all. He's shown some moves in the limited amount of moves they've given him, but I think he's going to need Ray to stick around if he's going to do anything.
Sorry, I'm now popping at Scott's comments. Here we go. Yes. I love that even better. That is great booking right there, Scott. I love that, man. That's great.
Oh man. And then maybe Dominic has to fall in as one of the disciples and be a believer because, he killed my father's blindness. I mean, he does look like Jesus now. They do have, they're definitely, the Seth's got that look going on. And I've really enjoyed the work that Seth's doing as a heel right now.
He's good. He's good as it. I'm not sure how far Becky is along now, but eventually I'm sure Rollins is going to take some paternal leave there as well, so he'll be out for a while. But I think that's a long way down the road. So maybe somebody puts him out for a while, maybe closer to maybe Royal Rumble, probably. But and Shane has referred to him as CrossFit Jesus in the past, so.
So, and these guys will do their best to try to salvage bad material because the talent's there. But you can't get past the fact that once they do this cinematic style, it's going to be a mess, and the ending's going to be ridiculous. Doug goes Rollins. I go Ray. Rollins. But either way, we all walk out of that one a loser. So that's next week's pay-per-view. Obviously, we're a little lukewarm on it.
Wow. Yeah. So let's head to the big finish. What do you think?
Let's head to the big finish, Doug. Let's go, man. Let's talk embarrassment. I'm actually, since we haven't done a show in 2 weeks because of the 4th holiday last weekend, I'm including 2 weeks worth of material here that we can talk about.
I think my some of my things come from actually last week.
Good.
So,
my embarrassment is not. My embarrassment is very recent. My embarrassment was Friday night. There's a lot from the last 2 weeks I could have pulled from, but then once I saw that karaoke sketch, that nonsense on SmackDown, I know that they are running short on talent because they showed the Braun match from their prior meeting in pay-per-view. They showed that in its entirety. To me, this just shows they're stretching the show, just like they did a couple weeks ago with the Boneyard match that they showed in its entirety. They're short on talent because of all their coronavirus cases. And so this was probably something that was put on these poor women. Very short term. It's not their fault that they were given horrible material to work with, but who was that exactly supposed to advance? Not only was it not funny or entertaining, what did it get? Who benefited from that? And it was confusing as far as, wasn't Lacey Evans most recently turned into a face? Weren't we supposed to start liking her because of her military background and her being a mother and all of this? And suddenly she's the heel because it's convenient for this sketch. The whole thing was a mess, and it was just an idea, a perfect example of WWE at their most ridiculousness when they're really stretching, and that's what this was.
See, man, I was going for SmackDown as a whole for an embarrassment this week, because I can see why Fox executives are now looking at it going, we paid how much for this? And it draws what? A global pandemic or not. I mean, come on, because I actually tuned out of SmackDown during the first segment with Hardy and Ms. Morrison. And I was like, I can't tonight, guys. I just can't. And I haven't been able to bring myself to circle back around to watch the replay. I was just done after that first segment. So I didn't even see the embarrassment of the karaoke other than them teasing it early on. I was like, no, I'm done tonight. If this is what I'm getting now and that's what's to come, I'm out, So
well, I mean, it was not kind to any of the women who were involved in it. It was embarrassing. It wasn't funny. And again, it mixed up the characters as to who was exactly a face, who was a heel, and who was supposed to come out of this looking good. No one did. And it was awful. How about your match?
I'm going to go with Keith Lee and Adam Cole for the dual championship match. Even though we got it spoiled ahead of time, which I have my own theories about, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I thought that was just a really great match all around. I love where it positions Lee now, and honestly where it positions the entire Undisputed Era as well, because none of them have gold now. I think they can effectively move on up to what we used to refer to as the main roster. But I think we'll see Undisputed Era on Error. Did I just call it Undisputed Error?
You did. It's all right.
Era on the main roster soon. But
if you don't straighten up, I'm going to challenge you to a bar fight. Pull it together, Ager.
What? It's empty, man. I'm good. It's empty.
So, I mean, I want to give a kudos here to what really was a good couple of weeks of professional wrestling. We've just got through talking about some of the ridiculousness of the sport and things we don't like, so we don't come across as grumpy old men. The idea of the Wednesday Night War has been there since, NXT decided to go head to head with AEW. But this past week, these past 2 weeks, we really saw what that could mean in terms of both sides bringing the best out of each other. When AEW decided they were going to do their Fyter Fest, normally a pay-per-view, they were going to do it over 2 weeks of television. WWE responded, which was another thing that showed that, hey, they're paying attention to what the other guy's doing. They countered by doing the Great American Bash for 2 straight weeks. And what we got were 4, I guess, if you include each of them as separate, 4 events that were beyond what you would normally see on Wednesday night, which is usually the best night of wrestling, regardless of which of the 2 shows you're watching. And so between these 4 programs, you had Penelope Ford and Sheeta tear it up in week 1 of Fyter Fest. You had that insane AEW 8-man tag match where Ray Phoenix defied gravity yet again this past week. You had Sasha versus Io Shirai in week 1 of the Great American Bash. That amazing street fight that very nearly stole the show on the Great American Bash this week. Candice LeRae and Mia Yim beat the crap out of each other to open that one. I mean, we saw some things that were very much pay-per-view worthy on free TV in the 4 events, and that's because these 2 are taking this war seriously. But, and that's my but, I agree with you. The headlining match of the Great American Bash wins these last 2 weeks because the stakes were high. It was winner take all with the championships, championship versus championship, 403-day reign, a historic reign by Adam Cole. I agree. He's on his way to either Raw or SmackDown, hopefully with the Undisputed Era in tow. But that's to be seen. But it's Keith Lee's moment. It's a well-deserved moment from a man who has an immense amount of talent, charisma, looks like a champion, can carry that promotion. He's the next guy. Adam had done everything he could over the last 103 days to elevate that championship, which he did tremendously. And just kudos all the way around to AEW and NXT for 4 great shows. That is my match of the week, though, Doug. You're the other one we agree on. It's hard to pick another that had the stakes of that one.
So I want to piggyback off that for my performer of the week, because I was looking back through trying to find the talent's name, but I haven't been able to surface it yet. But there was a NXT talent, a developmental talent who showed on, I think it was his Instagram, maybe his Twitter, where this was pre-taped, the Lee versus Adam Cole final, the outcome. He shows Lee in the ring with the confetti and everything, and Lee celebrating and talking about the winner. That came out about, I don't know, at least several days before that match actually hit. And I want to call that guy out as my performer of the week, because it's been totally sold as an accident. But all I can think is back in the day, and we've been talking about the Wednesday Night Wars, which is a cool callback to our Monday Night Wars from back in the day, when Mick Foley was winning the belt from, I believe, Triple H. No, it wasn't Triple H, because DX was there. But anyway, Mick wins the championship, becomes the WWE champion. Raw was pre-taped that night. Nitro was live. Tony Schiavone's giving away the results to that, which was a total backfire of what was supposed to happen, because everybody stopped watching Nitro and went over to watch Raw to watch Mick win. I think what we saw here was history repeat itself, where you have this annoying little heel that has held this belt for so long. You get the results leaked that the man to bask in his glory, the great Keith Lee, is finally defeating Adam Cole, baby, and taking both championships. People wanted to see if that happened or not, and I think it was all scripted, like most of WWE is. I don't think that guy accidentally, or you just can't just do that. I mean, there's a bit of media savviness. I think it is ingrained in to all talents, especially at the NXT level, of what to do and what not to do. I think this guy was playing a part, playing a role, and my shout out is to him. Good job, dude. You got eyes on your brand, and they won as far as overall viewership goes. They did not win the important demographic, but they won in overall viewership that night. So good job, dude.
Right. That'll put butts in the seats.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Hey, I've heard that conspiracy theory too. I don't know if it was someone just with a little bit of loose lips, or if it was planned. If it was planned, you're right. It worked. NXT is continuing its winning streak, and it's the longest winning streak that they've had in this head-to-head battle. So who knows? We were definitely the winners these last couple of weeks with the two going head-to-head, but they got a couple of big cards this next Wednesday as we go for Fight for the Fallen. AEW was handicapped in the fact that because of coronavirus, possible coronavirus exposure, their world title match couldn't take place. So there really was not a way that they could counter, even as great as that Orange Cassidy Jericho match was. They really couldn't counter with the same sort of stakes. So now to be continued. We'll see who wins next week. But my performer of the week, there's part of me that wanted to go with Evil, because there's no doubt about it. He had probably one of the best weekends you're going to have in wrestling. He won the New Japan Cup. He's the newest member of Bullet Club. He's not only screwed over Naito in that turn to Bullet Club, he then walks away with both the man's titles in addition to walking away with the cup. He had a pretty good weekend. But I actually didn't see all those contests, so I'm going to go with the performer of the week, just because of the emotion he put into it and the fact that it felt real. Got a shout out to my boy Heath Slater, fellow West Virginian. He was let go as part of the pandemic pink slips that were passed out a couple months ago by WWE. It's legit. He was one of the men who lost his job, but ever the loyal soldier. There was an opportunity to bring him back as part of an angle. He came back to confront his friend Drew McIntyre, former 3MB bandmate, and say, "Hey, buddy, why haven't you been calling me? I've been on these hard times." Man's got kids, Doug. Man's got kids.
Only 2, not 22, like the TV lines push.
Exactly, and that's the thing. How often do you actually get to see Heath give that kind of that opportunity to have the mic? And I think he actually spoke part of Part was promo, part was professional wrestling Carney speak, but part of it was the man actually talking about how he felt, and it felt that way to the viewer. At least it did to me. The match obviously was a a kick to the head and a pin, real short order. But for the promo beforehand and the emotional embrace afterwards, both the beforehand and the after, that part felt real. And whether it was or just an exaggerated version of the real, there was enough real in there. Good job to Heath Slater. Hopefully it's a situation like Drake Maverick, where the real world emotion you put into things pays off in not burning that bridge and getting another opportunity, because he's been loyal. He's got talent. Heath was great on Monday night.
He's got kids.
He's got kids.
You know, the weird thing about that whole 90-day compete clause is, they're released, they're still getting paid, and I guess since they're still getting paid within those 90 days, and there's that 90-day no compete, they are actually basically on call, just like Drake was, just like Heath was. He's still within his 90 days. It's like, hey, we're still paying you. We need you to come. We need you to come to TV this night. I think I don't know. It's weird to say, yeah, we don't need you anymore unless we need you, and if we need you, we need you. So we expect you to be here. I mean, I get it. Business is business, but it's kind of a weird thing. You know, it's not like he was getting anything extra for that, or it's like it's just part of his contract.
He didn't phone it in, though, and he could have phoned it in.
He did not phone it in. Honestly, I was this close to calling it for Heath Slater, again, one of West Virginia's own. But I really think what we saw. I really think WWE gambled on the Tony Schiavone, Mick Foley gaffe from back in the day during the Monday Night Wars, and said, "Hey, it worked once for us, so let's do it ourselves and see if people tune in." And as much as it pains me to say, I think NXT came up on top both weeks over Dynamite.
And that's Dynamite Doug saying that.
Folks. Right.
But there were definitely good matches throughout, but absolutely. I kind of agree. Both the NXT shows were just slightly superior. And that's actually a topic we're going to get in down the road, folks. We're going to talk a little more in depth in a future episode about the Wednesday Night Wars. What's good about it as far as being professional wrestling fans, and what actually can be the negative ramifications of having two of the better shows going head to head. I think that we got a good case study really to start talking about with what we saw the last couple of weeks. Absolutely. It was both good and bad that you had winners and losers. They're definitely urging each other on, and they're watching what the other's doing. But when you have a war, someone wins, someone loses, and that's part of the downside. But we'll talk about that at a later date.
Wait, me or Kevin?
That's funny. I think he's referring to his misspelling in his prior comment.
Oh, okay. I thought he was calling one of us out as a mark. I see what he's talking about now. Yeah, Dynamite Doug calling it for NXT. I love NXT too. I really do. But yeah,
you pull out the mark here, though. I mean, if you're going to pick one of the two of us, we're all marks, so we wouldn't be here, right?
Absolutely. Who else is watching? Only marks are watching us on Sunday night.
And speaking of, folks, I know we were off last Sunday. We're off again next Sunday. Not a holiday, but I'm out of town. And as you can see, because of his sloppy lariats, I got to carry Doug some weeks.
It is the two bros, not the one bro, one bro on vacation show. So
we're going to let you all have the opportunity to watch the horror show. And instead of commenting immediately afterward, we're going to let it sink in. We're going to let you, really feel, take your time with how you feel about watching a man blinded for your own entertainment. And then we'll talk about it when we come back in 2 weeks as part of our news segment. Because in 2 weeks, Doug, we do have, and I know we're talking a lot of ridiculousness here, but we have a pretty serious show coming in 2 weeks that we're looking very forward to digging into. And that is race inequality in the world of professional wrestling. Obviously, it's a big issue in our society, not just right now. It's always been an issue, but we're confronting it now in a way that we haven't in quite some time. And professional wrestling through the years has had to confront the way that it has treated race and, people of any sort of differences, be it, what kind of minority it might be. it's not always been fun to watch.
So
And
I'm not laughing at the topic we're talking about. I'm still laughing at Bull. His comments on the eye removal and just the ridiculous. I mean, it's we can talk about such serious topics that are in wrestling, but then I think it's really a reason why we love this sport, because we can laugh about the ridiculousness of an eye removal in the light of such heavy topics that are floating around in the world of wrestling right now. I mean, it's what brings us to the table to begin with, but
you'll get
there's
another mix of both here in 2 weeks when we come back, and we'll talk a little bit about what happens not only at Extreme Rules, which you just got through watching this preview, but we'll also talk Slammiversary, which happens next weekend as well. And then, as far as our main event goes, again, deep dive. Join us. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of race and inequality in professional wrestling, where we've come, how far we still have to go. And hopefully you all will join us and chime in as you did this week, because we appreciate it.
absolutely, guys. It's been great. I've been Doug. That's been Kevin. We've been.
Kevin,
I'm talking over him. Sorry, brother. We are
well,
out. Be safe. Take care of each other. We'll see you next time.